3 years and 2 months ago, on 31st of March 2016, I put down a £1,000 sterling reservation on the day one that the reservation process was opened in the UK to reserve a Tesla Model 3. Now, the UK Model 3 pricing has been released a few weeks ago. I'm driving currently an IONIQ Electric. We were looking forward to maybe getting a Model 3 one day. Now that the pricing's known, did I cancel? Did I go ahead? Spoiler alert, if I did cancel, how did I cancel the Model 3 reservation? Do I have any regrets since I've been holding this reservation for over 3 years, since the kind of day one that it was possible in the UK? And what's next for us? So yeah, let's talk about that in this video. So for some context then, back in March of 2016, I was driving a 24 kilowatt hour Nissan LEAF, and that was our first ever electric car. Before that, I'd owned one petrol car and then not owned cars really for about 20 years before that. I lived in cities and was on public transport, so buses and trains or walking around. The Nissan LEAF that we had was our first electric car experience. It was very positive. We were about sort of a year and a half into our lease at the time that the Model 3 reservation process was opened in the UK. And we were thinking, wow, you know, the promises at the time were at least 200-mile usable range and around about $35,000 US pricing. And that still was the case for the UK version of the Tesla website for a long time, until, you know, very recently it was still saying $35,000. No other pricing kind of details. Now, in the last few weeks, the UK pricing has been revealed, and this is for the standard range plus Tesla Model 3, because the kind of base standard model with no Autopilot and no leather seats and various other things, no electric seats, and no glass roof, like a metal roof. This has never actually been produced, that fully standard model. Given that kind of situation and knowing that and seeing the UK pricing, what did we decide to do? Well, it's heavily influenced by the fact that we're moving from the UK to Denmark, and we've already got an electric car that I'm kind of perfectly happy with, the IONIQ Electric. But yeah, we cancelled. So in this video, I'm going to go through the cancellation process, talk about whether I got any regrets about the whole thing, which will have a big bearing on, you know, the kind of expected prices and how they turned out. And I'm going to go through some details on that, including, you know, the taxes, the fees, the historical currency rates and so on, just for a moment or two. And then I'm going to talk about, you know, well, what's kind of next for us if we're sort of not going for a Model 3 now. So let's get on with that. So I don't think I've actually seen anyone go through the full cancellation process for the Model 3 in the UK. I think quite a few people have done it because the price was higher than they expected to do, but I just thought I'd sort of put together a kind of screen capture of that, of me doing it. Okay, so we're going to go through the actual process now of cancelling a Tesla Model 3 reservation in the UK. So we'll start by signing in. Yep, so I'll block this out. A cue long period of forgetting password because it's been so long since I logged in because I don't own a Tesla. So now we get the option to manage the reservation. And then it says to cancel your reservation, submit a request. Okay, let's click that. Okay, and it comes up with a whole screen with different reasons why you might be doing it. I'm cancelling my reservation because my install experience was lacking. Please explain. I'm not sure an electric vehicle is right for me. I own an IONIQ Electric, that's not the one. I'm unsure about charging, pricing, come back to that. I'm buying another car, nope. Other, please add details in the comments section. Moving out of the UK to a left-hand drive country. Sadly, not really sadly, but anyway, yeah. Okay, and then it asks for a lot of sensitive bank details, which I don't know, so I will enter those right now. Cue a little bit of time-lapse, blurring and checking stuff. So we have the option now to submit cancellation, and it says, upon submitting this cancellation request, your place in the queue will be lost. Yeah, come back to that. If you wish to reserve at a later time, it will be treated as a new reservation and be placed at the back of the queue. Now, the queue is utterly irrelevant in the UK. It does say, we're sorry to hear that you're cancelling your reservation. And let's submit cancellation. We are processing your request. Please wait. Your cancellation has been received. Okay. I think we're all done. So I'll check in a minute to see if I actually get an email confirmation or something, and I'll update the video with that. And yeah, there's been no update. My account just still says this. I've heard that it's 28 days or 28 working days or something to get the money back. We'll just see when the money turns up. It hasn't arrived yet. So yeah, with the cancellation process there that we've just seen, done, and that will just sort of follow through. Let's talk about whether I have any regrets about that. So I'll start by talking about my expectations as they were back in 2016, and then how they kind of evolved up to the point where the UK pricing was released in 2019, a few weeks ago. So in terms of my expectations at the time, as I said, I'd been driving a Nissan LEAF 24 kilowatt hour for a year and a half or so on, enjoying it. I was doing a sort of at least 70, 80 mile round commute at the time, and that was a bit much for the Nissan LEAF in all weathers, and over time that battery was degrading. It got even worse, which was one of the things that kind of led us to getting the IONIQ Electric that we have now, which is much more consistent with its range, I find, and no degradation as yet, as I've talked about in other videos. So it was on my mind that this kind of promised $35,000 US car with 200-mile range, however stripped out and basic it would be, that particular model would be a really good thing. And clearly I wasn't alone, because when I was in the Tesla store in Manchester on the day 31st of March 2016, putting down reservations, the visitor car park there was full up with a lot of Renault Zoes and Nissan LEAFs. So the main people in there doing the in-store reservations, it was, people like me, people with Nissan LEAF. So I think we're kind of aspirationally hoping that this new Tesla would be, something that would replace their LEAF in a few years' time. I kind of thought it might be about 2 years at the time. Turned out to be longer than that. And, that they could sort of have this sort of usable vehicle with access to the supercharger network, which, at the time it was light years ahead of anything that was in the UK for electric car, vehicle charging, and is still, the kind of gold standard, I would say. At the same time, we were quite kind of realistic that this was a kind of a risk. It was a kind of risky investment, or a risky thing to do with that £1,000 sterling reservation money. We knew it was fully refundable. We'll see how long it actually takes to come back, but it's still, legally fully refundable. But I said to my wife at the time, we can either kind of put this in savings and get a fairly lousy interest rate, or we can kind of give it to Tesla and they can hopefully do something that, develop some vehicle that's a bit better for the planet. And, we decided we'd rather put our money behind that. And I don't regret actually Tesla having my money for the time, and the kind of buoyancy it gave them with the number of reservations that they got on day one and the weeks and months following that. And, it was a bit of a kind of boost to the whole electric car movement worldwide. So I'm happy to have kind of been part of that. As the reality of it has worked out, in terms of regrets about the actual reservation process, I'm not really annoyed, but it's a bit odd that it's been practically meaningless, particularly now when it's coming to the UK, a right-hand drive market, very late in the whole process. It's meaningless. I think there's some slight priority given to reservation holders in terms of getting the cars next month in June. It's still saying June actually on the, if you order now without a reservation on the Tesla website. So I don't think the reservation process here makes any difference. There was possibly some priority given in the States, I don't know, but here it's irrelevant. I mean, you can just go on the website now. If you can afford it, you can just buy one and have it almost immediately. In the UK, there's practically no queue or waiting time. The US one says 2 to 4 weeks for the standard range plus there. So in terms of an actual sort of practical logistical thing, the reservation process was worthless, meaningless. I'm happy to have given that money for that purpose for that period of time. I don't mind that. I think I did think at the time that it would provide some kind of priority in a queue. Even though there's been this thing that Tesla has done, which they didn't talk about very much at the time, but, of releasing the higher margin models, the higher performance, the more expensive models, and then sort of creeping down as they ramp up their sort of economies of scale and can actually, produce the cheaper car at the margin that they need. Now, I quite liked the video by the EV Puzzle on this, where he was talking about, well, firstly, there's a lot of kind of technology and investment in producing these cars. They're very advanced. The Model 3 is one of the most advanced electric cars around. And that, they're not going to sell these things at a loss, and that they're also pitching to particular market segments. And Tesla has always been the kind of premium, if not in the UK, you'd call it luxury vehicle. So yeah, I can see that point of view, and that they might be wanting to go for certain market segments with an expectation of delivering a certain number of cars, beating out certain market segment competitors. But at the same time, I think Elon Musk, and I think, the whole sort of general coverage around the Model 3 has pandered to the kind of aspirational expectations of people like me, as someone who could just about afford a Nissan LEAF and was thinking maybe I'll stretch a little bit further and get a Model 3 because it'll be light years ahead in terms of range and charging infrastructure. Not bothered about Autopilot and those kind of things, as I've said when I've actually driven a Model 3 recently. They set expectations wrong, but I think they did that for kind of the typical Silicon Valley hype and corporate hype reasons, so I don't feel kind of sour about that, but I can kind of see why they did it, but I got a little bit sucked into it, I think. So in terms of the other parts of the regrets, then let's actually get to talking a little bit about the pricing and then what we might be doing next. Yeah, So the standard range plus model that we can see on the screen here, before the delivery destination documentation fees, is £38,050. Now this actually includes the £3,500 UK plug-in car grant that used to be £5,000 back when I had my Nissan LEAF, when I got that in September 2014. But that's now reduced to £3,500, and this kind of cash purchase price of the cheapest Tesla Model 3 in the UK at the moment includes that. So the actual kind of list price is higher than that, is 42,600, if you include the kind of fees in that. So it's 38,900 after it. It's 42,400 without the plug-in car grant deducted off the price. So that's the kind of, with all fees and taxes applied, £42,400. This kind of list price before the plug-in car grant being about £40,000, with recent changes in UK car taxation, means it's liable for the luxury tax, which is £320 a year for the first 5 years. So if you own a Tesla Model 3 for 5 years, the cheapest one currently in the UK, you'll pay an additional £1,600 on top of that. Before the government incentive of the plug-in car grant, it's £44,000 sterling. Total price for the cheapest UK Model 3 at the moment, including all taxes and fees, but no incentives. That would be almost $56,000 US. If you take off the plug-in car grant, it's £40,500 sterling, and that's equivalent in today's money to about $51,500 US. Now, if we turn to the current US prices, just for comparison, the basic price before sales tax and before tax rebates in the US for the cheapest Model 3 currently available, the same standard range plus as we have available to us in the UK, but obviously left-hand drive, $39,900 US, which is equivalent to £31,373 sterling. Now, if you take the federal rebate off that, you're looking at $36,150 US, which is £28,420 in UK money. So quite a bit under the kind of, £39,000 we've got. But of course, the US prices don't include sales tax on the website, because that's added, I guess, at the point of purchase, depending on which state you're in. Now, I Googled it, I might be wrong. The average seems to be 6%. It can be between 3 and 8, again, according to Googling it. So let's add 6% average, that makes then the cheapest US Model 3, once you take out the federal rebate, apply sales tax, but don't apply any kind of state rebate, you're looking at $38,320 more or less US, or around about close to £30,000 sterling. So sort of that's the closest comparison, I think, to the kind of US sale price that you would actually pay with some incentives, and the UK one, although in the US one it would still be cheaper if you were eligible for state rebates, but you're looking at kind of the equivalent of £30,000 sterling roughly for a US one, and the UK one is $39,000. So there's a kind of £9,000 premium, really, as close as I can get the equivalency. A bit more if we were thinking about the state rebates, which are a bit smaller than the federal one in most cases, I believe. How much I could have anticipated that in terms of thinking about many regrets I have. Yeah, I don't think I could have anticipated a kind of £9,000 premium, or the premium's actually even higher if you add on the kind of luxury car tax surcharge, which nobody kind of could have anticipated the Model 3 would fall into that when it came out in the UK, really, or I didn't at the time. I guess some people were predicting it before the pricing was released. Then you're actually looking at a kind of, more like a sort of £10,500 premium, which is not great. There's the additional issue, of course, that pounds sterling have lost about 13% of their value relative to the US dollar over the period from when I did the reservation, March 2016 to May 2019. So that actually makes quite a big difference in terms of what I was imagining the Model 3 might be, again with perhaps some aspirational expectations, and what it's turned out to be. So as of 2019, May, now when I'm making this video, a pound is about $1.27, and back in March 2016, the day one of the Tesla Model 3 reservations, then a pound was 1.4, almost 1.44 US dollars. So a big sort of drop there in terms of the value of the pound sterling against the dollars in terms of doing this conversion that, as I say, Tesla were doing right up until the UK pricing was announced on their website. They were still saying the $35,000 US dollar car. So let's just start then. What might have I had in my head, and other people, like other Leaf drivers or Zoe drivers, when they were reserving on day one with me in Manchester in this queue, and I hadn't even seen the release event. That was the day after. It's a great car, by the way. This is nothing to do with the actual car, it's just to do with the price and what I've done about it since. Yeah, $35,000 US at that time, without any kind of other factors taken into account. If we go back to when the pound was a bit stronger against the dollar in 2016, when I actually made the day one reservation with all these things again, then it would have been $35,000 US would have been different, and it would have been more like £24,300. Adding VAT onto that would have made it 29,000 more or less. And then finally, kind of including the 2016 currency rates, including sales tax, but taking off the incentive car grant, would have been 24,000. And this, of course, includes the fact that the UK's incentive used to be £5,000 back in 2016, not £3,500. It's been sort of scaled down over time. You'd have been expecting about a kind of £24,000 sale price for the Model 3 in 2016 sort of currency values. And that would have been great to get a 200-mile range car, even with a basic interior, no autopilot, all these kind of things, metal roof and so on. That would have been great. So, if you compare that kind of 2016 expectation, perhaps a bit unrealistic, and for a cheaper model that isn't yet on sale, £24,000 in that money, or even in current 2019 money from the $35,000 kind of indication, with sales tax, but with the car grant incentive taken off, £29,500. So the kind of £39,000 is about 10 grand above, the kind of best expectation for the cheapest model, and it's more like about 15 grand above sort of 2016 currency rates as an equivalent. So yeah, you can kind of see there. I don't have any regrets, as I said, about the whole process, but I think the kind of way that price expectations were set has not been that responsible or that kind of useful. The reservation process has been a bit of a mess, but I don't regret doing it. I think it was a worthwhile thing to do with the money. We have other priorities now. We're going to be moving, so I wanted the money back, and I've kind of reclaimed it. So there's a few things to bear in mind with the kind of what next. First, we know the UK Model 3 pricing now. The pricing of other cars with long ranges, like the Kia e-Niro, the Kona Electric, other things like the Volkswagen ID are on the horizon and so on. They're all in the kind of ballpark, really, of this kind of £35,000 sterling kind of range or above. So, in terms of thinking back at my expectations when in 2016, driving a Leaf, thinking battery technology would move along, thinking economies of scale would kick in to kind of reduce all the price of this kind of technology, that hasn't really happened. It hasn't scaled with my expectations or with the kind of the bubble, the hype of people kind of thinking it would do. In terms of what's next for us, well, we're probably moving from the UK to Denmark, possibly selling the IONIQ. That's going to be another video about whether we should import or sell that. And we'll just have to see what happens, really. It's good to know that all the various options are out there. It's been a bit disappointing, I must admit, that the pricing is still higher than I think where it should be around about this time to encourage kind of mass adoption. There is no option out there at all of a new electric car that's anywhere near the price of mass adoption, or even for people to stretch to it to get a kind of long range car as a kind of viable own car, only car. And I say this as someone driving an IONIQ Electric with 130-mile range, and we're fine with that. But we had to get that second hand, and the new availability and even second hand availability of all these cars is very, very poor. Yes, it's a bit of a disappointing time, actually. 2019, I think, was kind of puffed up as when all these things were coming out. The Model 3 was coming to the UK, all these other long-range contenders and things. And it does seem to be, it's still a very expensive and niche kind of area. Second-hand, for me, is still the best way into it all. We'll have to see in another country, getting up to speed with all the various things, what's going to be possible. I'm quite happy to use buses and to walk and trains and cycling and so on, so there's no problem there immediately other than going places with the family more easily. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing the cancellation process, how that actually works. I'll update in a future video whenever I get the money back. It is disappointing, but I don't regret it. And the future, I don't think, is that much clearer, really, than when we had the Leaf back in 2016. I think there's a number of kind of fundamental things that are not shifting here around price and availability and the capabilities of these vehicles. Three sort of key things. Whether they're affordable, whether they have the performance in terms of range and charging network that people want, and then whether they're actually, even available to buy in sufficient numbers. Yeah, so anyway, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from me as we go through this kind of transition period now of moving and possibly selling the electric car and so on. And bye for now.